just another story of the same. You know, we're having a good time.
Yes. Welcome back.
Welcome to another episode of the Baltimore Bureau Podcast.
Easy's back.
Oh my God.
I'm Easy Jackson. Here with Dr. Khalilah M. Harris, Esquire, and Dharna Noor.
Just regular Dharna Noor.
I love when you say my student loan title. I feel like I bring it back to the 70s. Back together again.
What's going on, y'all?
What's up?
Not much.
How's it feel to be back?
It's good to be back. I'm glad to be back. I had a good time. I was, took some creative leave of absence and mental health time.
Did you secure the bag?
It was nice. I secured a couple bags.
A couple bags.
Yeah, I secured a couple bags for 2019. That's for sure.
All right.
Yeah. So that's some things popping. Should be nice. I'm excited. What do we have going on in Baltimore? Any
Many
upcoming
things happening in Baltimore. Well, all right, this is not a real news event, but I understand that you will be hosting your annual Dirty Christmas this year.
That was not a setup.
What do we have going on? Do we have anything?
Something.
Are there any events that maybe one of us has something coming up? I mean, I don't.
But yes, my 4th annual Dirty Christmas is December 29th at Metro Gallery. I'm excited. 4 years we've been doing it. It's really like Dirty Christmas is like just a chance to kind of make fun of the holiday and, really like let loose and, kind of relieve the stress of Christmas and all the pressure. So we always do it after Christmas, before New Year's. And 4 years, man. Flying Dog is sponsoring. Ooh. So people, if you're listening, you're in Baltimore, December 29th, bring a coat to donate, and you will get a free Flying Dog Bloodline, which is my favorite beer.
Come through endorsements.
It's gonna be fun.
What else?
Yeah.
I'm not even going to be in the country, but I'm going to make like a We Want Easy sweater and wear it.
Oh, yes. So. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So on the non-promotional side of things, support y'all. Support. It's going to be lit. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. at 2201 Argonne Drive, the Baltimore City Delegation is going to be hosting its first ever town hall to inform the people about what's good for legislative session in Baltimore.
I might come to that.
They're off come down to Annapolis if you got something to say to me.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Kudos to them for making that happen. The Baltimore City Senate crew is also hosting an event the following Saturday from, I think, 10 to 1, and that one's going to be at Coppin.
All right.
So folk really should come out here, look, hold these folk accountable. Just because your fave got elected, I keep saying, you don't want to be 20 years from now like, I really liked her, or he was really good.
He seems so nice, but...
Nah, that's not the way we do. That's not the way we do politics, and that's not how we have progress for people. So
shout out to the new senators, Corey McCray, Antonio Hayes, Mary Washington.
Yep.
That's what's up. That's good. I think I'm gonna try to make that because I'm interested in seeing what they're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to hit both of these up at some point. Can't stay for the whole thing, but definitely want to show my face and hear what's being discussed.
Dharna, you were in Vermont last weekend for the Bernie Sanders Institute.
Yeah. So actually, the Sanders Institute is mostly run by his wife, Jane Sanders, who is, behind every great man, whatever, that whole thing. There were so many famous lefty people there. It was crazy. I'm not usually like a person who gets all starstruck about shit, but I would just look around and be like, oh, okay, there's Cynthia Nixon. Oh, there's Susan Sarandon over there. Oh, hello, Cornel West. And it was cool. I think people have some really good ideas coming forth, and it's interesting to see people try to bridge sort of international left movements together. I
got jealous when I saw you post your picture with Susan Sarandon. I was like,
I have an alternative view
of Susan Sarandon.
No, just the event. Were there regular people there? Grassroots folk.
So yes, actually there were a number of grassroots folks there. I think the majority of people who were invited were from sort of smaller movements. I will say though that well, whatever. You cannot have a perfect set of people with 200 people, but obviously, like with all of these movements, there is much more that could be done to make them inclusive. But the coolest part of it for me, I think, was meeting folks who are like doing, you know, like grassroots environmental organizing from Vermont, or folks who are working on community land trusts in Burlington and stuff like that. Nice. So I think did do a pretty good job of bringing regular people to the table to, I don't know, meet with like Yanis Varoufakis or whatever. Nice. I shouldn't use bad words. I'm sorry.
C'est la vie.
You can use bad words.
Maybe it's your this is so not important, but your eyes are popping.
Oh, well, thank you, Khalilah.
It's made you fiery.
Oh man, maybe that's.
I mean, you're always cute, but like the blue liner with the shadow. Sorry, well, I digress. Y'all can't see that over the podcast.
Yeah. Well, maybe some of you can. But yeah, I don't know. It was cool. I think that there is still a lot to be discussed moving forward. But we got an interview with Bernie Sanders, and he said that we should stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia. So that's a big thing, I guess. I don't think he's ever said that before.
Dope.
Yeah. Interesting. So there's some stories on the site.
Yeah,
right?
mad stories on the site. Mad more coming. So also, exciting thing that's happening, or that happened, I guess, is y'all should pick up a copy of Baltimore Magazine.
Oh yeah.
To see our beautiful faces.
Yes, we are in
and Easy's
Baltimore
beautiful words.
Magazine. Yeah, I got like 2 sentences in there. That's nice.
I mean, you had a whole feature like the month or 2 before, so.
Well, I got 1 sentence, so you're good.
Did I? Oh, yeah, I did. The whole bushel. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Easy Jackson.
I be forgetting.
Come on, yo. I got 2 sentences. Excuse me for not having the whole article.
Right. Also, my band is in the same issue. So I mean, I need to shut up and humble myself.
Bruh.
I'm in there twice. Relax, easy.
Sit down.
You're in there twice. But shout out to Baltimore Magazine. I thought it was a good article. Yeah. Shout out to Lisa.
Yeah, shout out to Lisa. Thank you.
Who killed it. But yeah, check that out, Baltimore Magazine.
Yeah.
Y'all want to get into the stories?
Let's do it.
I suppose so.
So this first one is one that you did, Khalilah. We're going to show an excerpt of it. If you want to check out the full story, you can go to therealnews.com. But this is an excerpt from Black Communities Denied $156 billion in property value, says the new Brookings report.
Andre, picking up on what Lawrence is discussing here in Baltimore, will you talk a little bit about what other economic development strategies could have been created or developed with that $156 billion?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you look at the average amount of money that Black businesses use to start a business, that $156 billion would equate to 4.4 million Black-owned businesses. If you look at the average cost of a 4-year degree at a public university, that $156 billion equates to 8.1 million 4-year degrees. That money could have replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over. It is essentially the same amount, 97%, of the damage, the cost of the damage of Hurricane Katrina. And it goes without saying that money could have gone into the equity used to remodel the home, to move into another neighborhood, to finance. I wouldn't advise it, but to finance a car or a vacation. But more importantly, that money should have gone into city government, so they could provide public services in terms of education, infrastructure, and other services. So it's a massive amount of money that's lost. It's the money that people should have used to lift themselves up socially. And so what we need to put to bed after this report are these notions that Black folk are causing their own plight, that these theories of cultural pathology that keeps coming up whenever something happens in the Black community. No, we need to really, instead of saying it all starts at home when something goes wrong, when people say it all starts at home, it should equate to structural inequality in the United States.
Mm-hmm. We see economists Sandy Darity and Derek Hamilton's research also dispelling the myth that Black people don't save at the same rates of other races, right? That Black people aren't investing in their children's education. I mean, they also say that it's a myth that all of Black wealth, or that Black wealth can be heavily impacted by owning homes, but they talk about it in the context of all of these other factors, right? They're not saying that owning a home cannot build wealth. It is that people use statements like you just said, Andre, that, well, maybe if they would just buy houses, as if they aren't being prevented from it.
Or
they
subprime,
would, right?
When they do
right,
it.
or getting subprime, or having homes flipped on them, right? Because they're vulnerable and they are trying to experience the American dream. Lawrence, will you talk a little bit about what policy steps you would recommend for people here on the ground in Baltimore and in other communities like Baltimore?
Right. Well, before I get to solutions, I want to say that we should, as we talk about redlining, let's remember that there's green lining taking place. There's yellow and blue lining taking place. So there's the advantaging that they're receiving in white communities or whiter communities, lower interest rates, better lending access, better capital access. So they're actually receiving the benefits that are associated with, like what Dr. Perry is saying, of having a lack of Blackness. So whiteness is conferring higher values and wealth. So for me, solutions would include everything from what I call Baltimore neighborhood reparations, taking 10% of our city budget and allocating that towards the 20 or so top redline Black communities in this city, and dividing that proportionately to the damage that redlining has done to those communities, and allowing a democratically elected racial equity disbursement board to actually spend that money in that neighborhood to help undo the damage that has been done by redlining. There's that. I would also suggest the $3 billion racial equity social impact bond, because a lot of what redlining has done, and I say that redlining is the economic weaponization of racial segregation. A lot of what redlining has done is it leads to things like lead poisoning, because you don't have the capital to abate the homes from the lead that's in them, the pipes, the soil, the air, the water. And so lead is proliferating in Black communities and is damaging the health and the minds of our children to this day. We know it in Flint, but it's also in Baltimore, Chicago, places where there's lots of violence. Well, that's one of the impacts of lead poisoning. It inhibits people's ability to regulate their emotions. So half of the racial equity social impact bond, I suggest, is to get rid of lead in our environments, in Black communities, so that we no longer have this toxic neurotoxin flowing through the bloods and brains of our children. And then you can take maybe $500 billion to address housing, the lack of housing because people aren't able to get these loans to buy homes, and homelessness that is a result of all of this, and the foreclosures and the rental evictions that come from not having this wealth. And then also maybe the $1 billion that would remain from that.
So you said 500 billion just now, 500 million?
Oh, I'm sorry, 500 million, yes.
I don't want
out of the
anybody's
3
heads
billion.
to explode.
Yes. So yeah, the $1.5 billion for lead poison, half $500 million or 500 million for housing. And then also maybe the other $1 billion I would split up for violence prevention programs, substance abuse reduction programs, and other things that need to be done, education in Black communities as well. So $3 billion here in Baltimore, racial equity, social impact bond, I think would be a fantastic way to go, in combination with Baltimore neighborhood reparations, also in combination with changing our city budget so that we're no longer spending over $500 million on the police, which is more than health, housing, arts, parks, civil rights, and job development combined. I think that's an apartheid budget. So I would change all those things. Baltimore neighborhood reparations, $3 billion racial equity social impact bond, and also change our apartheid budget to a freedom budget.
Wow.
Get your hand out my pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
3,000 times the lead pipes in Flint, Michigan could have been replaced with that money. 8,100 bachelor's degrees could have been fully funded.
It's mind-boggling. I thought it was incredible to bring Andre Perry and Lawrence Brown onto the same panel and to really localize those national figures. I thought that was a really, really interesting conversation.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it, because I don't think people realize, not just in Baltimore, but in how many other cities like are dealing with, issues either, exactly similar to Flint or close to,
I mean, I love what Lawrence said about, and you'll see that in this short piece here, but he talks about how Baltimore itself can enact policy to disrupt some of this, including changing the city budget from being what he calls an apartheid budget to a freedom budget, which is really about reinvesting or investing to begin with in communities that have had great divestment. And even in the comments in some of the places the story is posted, you still see people having misunderstanding about, if your home is devalued. Some people are like, well, isn't that good? Then more people can buy homes. It's like, no. That is an asset that is supposed to be able to allow you to
build wealth
and invest other places. And it is not good if people can just keep buying houses at a low value when the home should be valued at a higher amount, because the people living in those homes attempting to sell it don't realize the value in the way folk do in other communities.
Right.
So,
a devalued home and an inexpensive home are not the same thing.
Right.
Like devalued implies that there's a value that was lost.
Yeah. Like my house is worth $300,000 like yours, but in this community, I only get
$150 or whatever.
$150, $200 for it. So,
yeah. I also think it's interesting to sort of pair this analysis from the Brookings Institute with the proposals for sort of the individual ways that wealth can be built with a policy like baby bonds, like Derek Hamilton and Sandy Darity talked about in a piece that you did, I think maybe 2 months ago now. So yeah, thanks Khalilah for always, bringing these national studies to the local level. Shout outs to Lawrence Brown for really being a pillar of doing that.
Definitely. This next one is City Council proposes income-based water billing amid rate hikes.
Here at Baltimore City Hall for the Real News Network, I'm Dharna Noor. Council President Jack Young has just introduced income-based water billing for the city of Baltimore, in a city where advocates and council members say that the water affordability crisis is out of control. Water bills have tripled over the last decade in Baltimore. Just before Monday's council meeting, advocates gathered to support legislation they say will promote equity in the face of rate hikes.
The Water Accountability and Equity Act is the comprehensive, forward-thinking legislation that we need to ensure that everyone in our city has access to water.
The Water Accountability and Equity Act was sponsored by City Council President Jack Young and co-sponsored by every member of the council. If passed, it will establish a water affordability program based on customers' level of income. It would also create an office to hear grievances and appeals from customers.
It will reform the way our water billing system works and ensure that more revenue is collected for the Department of Public Works to carry out their critical job of maintaining our infrastructure while still protecting our customers.
The legislation caps customers' water bills based on their income level. It uses a formula that takes into account both household water use and household income relative to the federal poverty threshold.
So basically, they would get reductions in the monthly fee they pay based on their income, so that they would be able to reduce the share of monthly income that water now overtakes.
For instance, if you make 50% of the poverty limit, your bill would be capped at 1% of your income. If you make 100 to 200% of the poverty level, your bill would be capped at 3% of your income.
And basically, tenants just need to show up, provide a copy of their lease, provide their financial information in order to get a credit, which would then be dispersed to them either once a month or at the end of the year.
Food and Water Watch and members of the Right to Water Coalition have been pushing the council to introduce this legislation for years. Last December, President Young told The Real News it would be introduced in January 2018.
The bill should be coming out in January at our next council meeting. But the advocates say in the past year, they've created a more robust piece of legislation.
Well, I think the delay occurred because there were some conversations with the DPW trying to work with them and move them along and try to work out a compromise. I think that now is the right time to have it done because DPW just announced another 30% rate increase. So now is the moment we really need to be proactive and making sure our water service is affordable and accountable and that people have really due process under the law to dispute bills.
This proposal comes just days after Baltimore's Department of Public Works, or DPW, proposed 3 annual rate hikes of approximately 9% starting in July 2019. DPW also announced a new assistance program.
DPW's proposed discount program, it's just more of the same. They're expanding their existing senior discount to all low-income customers. It's not a bad thing, it's just not enough. We really need to make water service affordable for each household. So we need to look at each household and adjust bills down to a level that each household can afford to pay based on their income. And their current dispute process, it doesn't really allow people to have a thorough follow-up. It's not consistent, it's not consistently applied. There are no real timelines for people to get their disputes resolved.
The sort of senior discount program, those are discretionary. They're not legal, they're not set in stone, and they don't provide a tenant with the rights. If someone's in a discount program, it still doesn't stop a landlord from evicting them based on unpaid water bills.
DPW says rate hikes are necessary to raise funds for infrastructure repairs. Baltimore is required under federal consent decree to repair its 100-year-old water and sewage system. But Young and supporters say that creating a new system where residents can actually afford to pay their water bills could actually drive a revenue increase.
While this proposal makes sense on a basic human level, it also makes sense from a financial standpoint. The common misconception is that poor people don't want to pay their bills. This is terrible slander and totally false. People pay bills that they can afford. I say to the middle-class homeowner, let me quadruple your mortgage by raising the interest rate by double-digit points year after year, and we'll see if that doesn't cause you to miss a few payments.
We reached out to DPW for response, and they said, we look forward to working with President Young and the council members. Our Baltimore H2O Assist program is fiscally and socially responsible, offering meaningful discounts to those in need. In November, Baltimore became the first major city in America to ban water privatization, and the advocates say this new bill is the next step to ensure water affordability.
We know privatization would only exacerbate the affordability crisis that's so widely felt in our community. Private companies, they're not charities. They're not going to offer us large sums of money for free. They'll want to make a profit on that. In Baltimore, we just can't afford it. And so banning water privatization was the right move. And then Council President is acting on that. And he's taking up the mantle that we gave to him to really lead our community and make sure that we have safe and affordable water that is accessible across our community.
The bill is expected to pass through City Council and then head to the mayor's office for final approval.
We were at lunch with her, and she seemed more than willing to negotiate, discuss, and get involved. And we got to do this. We got to do this.
Here's what I loved about this piece. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe love is not the right word. Maybe it's what irritated me about the content, not the story itself. They're proposing this even in the midst of a 30% increase in water bills. Yeah. Like, at what point do you stop using regressive taxation fees on top of the backs of the people who can least afford it, as opposed to doing something like, oh, I don't know, the people who work in the city but don't live here, putting extra back into the city to pay for that infrastructure that they use and benefit from.
Yeah, really. I was actually, so in Vermont at the Sanders Institute gathering, I was talking to the mayor of Barcelona and hearing Yanis Varoufakis from Syriza in Greece speak, and realizing that, like, no American, like, nobody in the United States really uses the word austerity to describe anything that happens at a city level. But, like, that's what this is. Like, if you're increasing water bills from regular people to spend some billions of dollars on repairing sewage, like, that's austerity, and there are other places that money could come from. So yeah, also, just, you know, it was almost a year ago now. It was like mid-December last year that Jack Young said that he was going to be introducing this in January of 2018. So, you know, it's good to see that it's finally happening, but it's been a long time coming.
Priorities.
Yeah.
I just Googled the word austerity.
What does it mean?
Conditions characterized by severity, sternness, or asceticism.
Asceticism?
Asceticism.
Is there another one?
God.
Is there another one after that one?
Extreme plainness and simplicity of style or appearance.
Wait, keep going. Come through dictionary.com.
Sternness or severity of manner or attitude.
All right, let's hold on.
Maybe we need economic austerity.
Yeah. So the kind of austerity that I'm talking about.
Oh, wait, hold on. Here's one. A situation in which people's living standards are reduced because of economic difficulties.
That's the one.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
I don't want you over there like,
I was trying to.
What does this have to do with water bills?
Yeah, Jack Young was looking pretty stern, but no, but yeah, I mean, obviously we need to repair our sewage system. It is very bad, and for not like just Chesapeake Bay reasons. Yeah. When there is human feces streaming into people's basements, that means that there's a real problem. When we're seeing water main breaks like every time it rains, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
But people will, it seems, pay for water bills that they can actually afford to pay for. So
listen, nobody's trying to say I shouldn't pay a water bill, right? Yeah. But the increases have been so rapid and so large.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is an austerity plan because you're saying to people who can't afford to repair their basement when that sewage backs up into the basement, but you pay more water bill.
Yep.
Right. Not all of the people who come into the city every day but don't live here and take wealth out of the city, putting more into the city. You that live here, right, and who we've not invested in, right?
Right.
You don't have a bond or a TIF or a pilot.
Yep.
So those people, we're not going to ask them to pay more. In fact, no taxes for you.
Yeah.
But you pay more. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So. Another circumstance where, you know, there's increase in cost and no increase in wage. Services. Or
right.
Yeah, and services or or salary.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this actually has the potential to be revenue increasing for the Department of Public Works because it's not that people don't want to pay their bills.
Right.
So
if it's affordable, I'll
more
pay it.
People
but
can
if
pay
you send me a bill that I can't pay, I'm just not going to pay any of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then you couple that with like the horrendous number of incorrect bills that people are getting or bills being sent to the wrong addresses, and it's a whole mess. So we'll see what happens with this.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. This next story, an off-duty cop pulled a gun on a teen waiting for a bus. How will the city respond? Taya Graham did this one. Let's check it out.
Is American policing resistant to reform? The Real News investigated a recent case to try to find some answers. The terrifying encounter with an off-duty Baltimore police officer was captured on video. A cop who pulled a gun on a city teen without identifying himself.
I thought I was going to die because I didn't know who he was. To me, he was a regular dude up the street. I mean, he was dressed like me.
An incident that still haunts the intended target, Juwan Nicholson.
He pulled the gun and me and my homeboy put our hands up like this and started walking away. And he followed us.
And his mother, Erica Hamlet.
He can be doing everything right. Everything right. And that man had every opportunity to kill my son. And from the lies that he's told since the incident, he would have had no reason not to tell a lie to make it seem like my son provoked him to do what he did to him. Dead men don't tell tales.
But also has become a symbol of the city's apparent inability to reform police in a department under federal consent decree, and raises questions on how to fix it.
So I'm glad that my son made it out alive, and people keep saying, well, he living, what you mad for? Because of what he did.
The near-deadly series of events started last year when Juwan was waiting at a bus stop after school. A stranger who did not identify himself started to question him.
But he came up and he never identified himself as an officer. He asked us why we was over there, asked us a few questions, and then he pulled his gun.
Juwan called county police, who disarmed the cop, but the family was stunned when they learned the potential assailant was a city cop.
Big, I'm looking at him like maybe he's a kid and he was trying to rob him. That was my thought, like somebody's trying to rob my son when I was running to him. And when we approached and he was still coming towards them, My son's like, "Mom, don't say nothing to him." And I'm like, "No, what's going on? Who are you?"
Hamlet filed a peace order against the officer, which a judge approved. During the hearing, the officer said he felt threatened by the teen who he thought looked suspicious. We contacted his lawyer, who did not respond. But since then, Hamlet says efforts to hold the officer accountable have revealed a system that is hostile to civilians.
His lawyer brought up stacks of our Facebook posts because he couldn't find any criminal record on us, because I don't have a criminal record. My son doesn't have a criminal record. So he went to Facebook and pulled up all the posts, all my Facebook posts, and said my son was big and he was aggressive. If he was so big and aggressive, then why would you even approach him in the first place?
And a department she believes where her concerns seem to fall on deaf ears.
They treated us like we were criminals. And I was like, I'm not doing that. We're not criminals. We're here to give a statement because we filed a complaint. And then they asked me to refrain from social media, don't do any interviews. And then...
With the media?
Mm-hmm.
They told you that?
Mm-hmm.
What did they say?
He said, "Can you refrain from speaking to the media? We know you've spoken to the media," because I'd already done an interview with Jane Miller by then.
Which is why she is even more troubled by the current conflict surrounding the agency of last resort for her, the Civilian Review Board. The civilian body is supposed to offer residents an alternative opinion to internal police investigations. The board has little power and cannot mete out punishment. But that truism has not kept city officials from attacking the board's independence. Recently, the city's top lawyer asked members to sign a second non-disclosure form.
The statute desperately needs to be revised. And that is the source of the conflict between the city law department and the existing Civilian Review Board.
A move that board member George Bunton says was not only redundant, but filled with vague language.
The new one that was presented to us by the city solicitor had a lot of language that was very vague, seemed very open to interpretation later.
Since the board refused to sign it, the police department stopped turning over complaints as required by law, a move Davis justified during a recent hearing in Annapolis.
The Civilian Review Board right now is very frustrated because they want to be able to engage with the public and share more with the public about what they are doing and the outcome of their cases. But here it is. The procedures established under this subheading, this is the Civilian Review Board, may not be construed to affect or change the methods and procedures for suspension or dismissal of police officers.
But David Roca, legal director of the Maryland ACLU, an organization that has a non-voting position on the board, says the action is illegal.
What the city solicitor is not free to do is attempt to hold them hostage by preventing them from doing their job until they sign this ridiculous confidentiality agreement that misstates the actual confidentiality obligation.
And recently, Davis released this letter, which states the city will begin turning over complaints. The city's uneven experiment with civilian oversight began in 1999 after a state senator was illegally detained by police.
State Senator Joan Carter Conway used to have a business on Monument Street. She was doing accounting, and there was a young child that was hit by a vehicle not far from her office. So she walked out of her office to check on this child, see what was going on. The ambulance already arrived and other folks were there, so the ambulance driver is telling her, "Back up, ma'am, stay out of it." She said, "Well, I just want to see how the child is doing." Police show up, and they see her interacting with this emergency person vehicle. Police didn't ask any questions, walk up. "Get out of the way, lady." She said, "Wait a minute. Who you think you're talking to?" Because Joan, Joan Conway, she's not going to take that. Next thing you know, the cop is putting handcuffs on her, sitting her on the curb. This is a sitting state senator. So as a result of that arrest, her attorney at the time, Baltimore City Councilman Martin O'Malley, was her attorney. Wow. Got her out of jail. She actually had to get out of being booked. And at that point, that's when we initiated the discussion of a Civilian Review Board with teeth.
One of its architects, former state senator Clarence Mitchell IV, says it was supposed to be a starting point for civilian oversight, not a long-term solution.
There were incidences that were driving the need for civilian oversight because the internal affairs and the state's attorney, and this is an African-American state's attorney, Pat Jessamine, refused to bring a case against Officer Smoot, even though you had videotape.
He thinks more civilian control is the best long-term answer, but needs to be strengthened. It's an idea that has support in Baltimore, where the police department is under consent decree with the Department of Justice, including Councilman Brandon Scott.
Going to a structure that has a board of police commissioners, of which the chair of that board will be a citywide elected compensated official that the citizens are directly can hold them accountable, in addition to some appointees who will oversee that person who's the law enforcement. This is a process that's done in Los Angeles, it's done in Kansas City, in St. Louis, in Detroit, where they elect the majority of their board.
But the current debate does little to help Erica Hamlet and her son, Juwan Nicholson.
I apologize to him often because I have to tell him that I'm fearful. It's not something, sometimes it's so bad that I can't even control it.
Her son still has trouble coping with the aftermath of his encounter.
I just look at it like, I'm glad I didn't blank out and charge at him. I just threw my hands up. You got that.
And with nowhere to turn, the tight-knit family can only wait and hope that a system that seems intent on protecting police will someday answer to the people.
Whenever I've called Baltimore City Police, I've never had a good encounter with them. Never. And with us being the victim.
Baltimore City Police Department just cannot seem to stay out of trouble these days.
Well, let's take a step back. Why are you in Baltimore County pulling your gun out, sir?
Yeah.
Off duty.
Because Baltimore City Police Department cannot seem to get themselves together.
Yeah. But I think that like, what you're saying is like part of the reason why they can't seem to get themselves together is because
no checks and balances.
Yeah, exactly.
No oversight.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do whatever you want to do.
That's not even your jurisdiction,
not
bro.
Your jurisdiction.
Like you're supposed to alert the local police and let them deal with these two suspicious gentlemen. The part about this that pisses me off, and it consistently pisses me off, is, you know, I get the opportunity to work with young people doing, you know, hip hop classes or advocacy, whatever. And the fact that young black men are automatically assumed to be dangerous because of their size. It just really pisses me off because you can look at this story and see this young man as a teddy bear. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I see so many young brothers like this. Like, now granted, yes, there are some that are out there that are violent and all that, but even they can be dealt with in a manner that does not require you pulling your fucking gun out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Excuse my language, but it's really it's really frustrating, man.
Yeah, my issue is that what this story illuminates, both about the Civilian Review Board process being wholly inadequate, and about the fact that, you know, there's a little respectability politics at play, because but for this young man being the right victim and his mom being the right advocate, you know, stories like this don't get lifted up because this happens every day to young people. And I'm irritated that a brother did this to a child and then came back with the, I was scared of the big black man. Like, word, you have a gun.
Yeah, and you're black.
Why'd you approach him?
Yeah.
With your gun, being a black man, out of your jurisdiction. And then here we have Baltimore City Police, you know, putting up barriers for this mom to be like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And then she says, you know, they tried to find things out on their Facebook.
Yeah, digging up her Facebook and all of that stuff. It's like, come on, y'all. Like, I don't know. I'm curious about this officer's mental health in particular, because it seems like an episode. It seems like some kind of like psychotic or bipolar episode or something. Much like some of the videos we see where like white people are calling the police on black people. A lot of those I'd be watching and I'm like, this woman is having an episode.
A lot
like,
of them,
you know
either an episode or there's an ongoing mental health issue where you don't even hear yourself being abusive or just spouting, you know, some people are just being racist, but other people, you know, their behavior is like really off.
Yeah, I mean, this dude, this is very random, like you said, city cop in Baltimore County, and
stop and frisking this kid.
Yeah.
where are you going? You look suspicious. What are you doing, sir? You're not even allowed to do that.
Yep.
Right.
You're not even supposed to be working right now.
Right.
But and to your point about how this seems like it could be an episode, it brings me back to some of Boehner's reports several months ago on the Gun Trace Task Force about how so often in these encounters, it's a police officer who has a gun and is mentally ill because they have been traumatized and are like, there is this culture of this sort of toxic masculinity in the police department where you can't reach out for help, up against somebody who is also traumatized from living in a disinvested and violent neighborhood, who has been dehumanized by police officers and others their entire and also possible. So it's two people who potentially have guns, who have been traumatized, who are mentally ill. Like that's a horrible situation.
Yeah. I think I saw something the other day where like police in Canada, and I think in Toronto or something, like they start their day off with meditation.
That's interesting.
And I know, like you laugh right immediately, like your first knee-jerk reaction
in my mind,
is to chuckle.
If you can get grounded.
I think no, I'm not saying that's bad. I think
it would be awesome. Like I looked at the picture and I was like, they probably don't have
a moment to pause. Like, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to feed my family. I come in here, I go on the street, people are in my face. You know, it's a risky, industry for me to be in. And to Dharna's point about, the stress level and the toxic masculinity, the other issue of the toxic masculinity when it comes to mental health is them kind of closing ranks and kind of doing we can figure this out internally. Like, no. You're not helping them by like, that guy, we know he's a bit of a loose cannon, but we'll take care of it. Like, no. Because what happens when that gun gets turned on you the day that he goes way beyond, what's appropriate? So.
And the audacity of the justice system, man, just to like, it's disgusting.
Yeah. And also then to tie this back to the Brookings Institute report that you were reporting on, I think it shows again that like as communities of color and particularly Black communities are disinvested and are not valued, there's this—
And then they're over-policed.
Exactly. There's this increased idea that like police are there to serve people who own things that cost a lot of money. And so there's like less of an incentive to protect Black folks, which is a horrible system of policing to begin with. And I think that you continue to see like that sort of rampant racism in police departments, even at the hands of police officers of color, when that is the mentality that you have, when you have that mentality that you're supposed to be protecting people who are,
And we should move on, but back to the Brookings report. On the Brookings website, there is an interactive map to show Baltimore's disparities in the property valuation. But then Lawrence and the report also talk about, Lawrence specifically was talking about how many fewer white people are in Baltimore, but how their communities in the L get so much more in terms of city services. Right? It's not even like... So first and foremost, there's like 23% white people in the city, 60-something% Black folk. But the communities that are most heavily populated by white people get most of the resources. Now, what doesn't make sense about that is it's not like, if we say Baltimore City Schools, where the district itself might have less in terms of income taxes or property tax to apply towards schools in a way that a Montgomery County would. So the dollars applied in Montgomery County schools are greater and goes wider. Inside of the city, you should not be allocating resources based on the valuation of homes or the incomes of the people in discrete communities.
Certainly.
Like, then people want to talk about what are we going to do about crime? How about pick up the trash? And we saw this in a Facebook post that was going viral a couple of weeks ago. Pick up the trash in everybody's community. Don't then turn to people and say, you need to keep your own communities clean. No, I don't have as many trash
cans. Or exactly.
Or the cans.
Or the public trash cans.
Or this mattress in the alleyway is not because the people in this community don't value our community. One of you developers came and dumped a bunch of crap in the alleyway.
Exactly.
So it's all... all connected.
It's all crazy. Nurses say union will help hold Hopkins accountable to the community. Let's check this story out.
Johns Hopkins Hospital is under heavy criticism today as registered nurses have gathered to talk about the challenges they face in forming a union and their need for a safe work environment. These nurses say that Hopkins Hospital has not only not delivered on its promises of support to the surrounding community, but that they also have engaged in intense anti-labor efforts.
Workers should be able to choose to join a union, free from management intimidation, harassment, or interference.
The struggle to unionize nurses at Johns Hopkins Hospital took on a new urgency today, as a group of healthcare workers gathered at a town hall to not only demand better working conditions, but to demonstrate their concerns reach far beyond a labor dispute.
This report, which we worked very hard on, serves to illuminate the gap between the reality and reputation. Our work in exposing the patient care conditions is an extension of our work at the bedside. Nurses are advocates for our patients. For many of us, nursing isn't just a job, it's a calling. So the care of our patients is our highest priority.
And affects the lives of patients and the health of the community. The efforts to organize nurses at the powerful Baltimore institution and the state's top private employer has been met with stiff resistance. Hopkins even hired a high-profile union-busting law firm, Littler Mendelsohn, to fight back.
Unfathomable that some of the emails that come out to the nurses are blatant lies and untruths, as you could say. Saying things like, well, that nurse who started things, he must work for the union. I'm like, no, I've met his wife and dog, and he doesn't work for the union. And saying, well, we did this, why do we need the union now?
And have made it so difficult for nurses to communicate, they filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board in April. But the theme at today's gathering was focused on a series of reports that illuminate how working conditions can impact patient care. The report highlights how low patient-to-nurse ratio leads to dangerous conditions, and how high turnover means less experienced nurses are involved in critical care, and also how Hopkins benefits more from the taxpayers of Baltimore than it invests in the community. A focus nurses say show how critical their efforts are to fixing problems that affect everyone.
An example for you is that we work with patients who are on continuous dialysis. Those patients are on a dialysis machine 24/7 because they're so sick that they cannot survive intermittent dialysis. The national standard is that those patients should have a 1-to-1 ratio, one nurse for one patient, because the machines are very sensitive, they alarm, and if there's a delay in care in solving the alarm, a patient can lose an entire unit of blood. What's happening right now is that those patients are paired in the ICU at Johns Hopkins throughout all of the ICUs. The result of that is that patients are regularly losing whole units of blood, and these are patients who already have a need for blood as compared to your regular healthy person.
In the emergency room that I'll be discussing later, there are patients that have waited 18 hours to get care. There are patients that have bled, cardiac arrested, etc., while waiting to be cared for in the emergency department.
We asked Johns Hopkins for a response, and they gave us a written statement. On behalf of the nurses, faculty, and staff at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, we are proud of the high quality and compassionate care we provide and the contributions we make every day for our community. We are proud of our many efforts to help our city succeed and its residents thrive. Johns Hopkins supports the community in hundreds of ways. But the push to unionize appears to be gaining key political support.
You are the ones who constantly worry about patients even when you've gone home. You're the ones who wish you could, in a way, work a 24-hour shift sometime because you really you're worried about that patient and how they will make it.
On hand for the town hall was Congressman Elijah Cummings, the chair of the powerful Congressional Oversight Committee. He spoke about his respect for nurses after a 6-month hospitalization for a heart condition.
And I believe that it's not just the issues that may exist in Hopkins, it's not just Hopkins, but it's probably a lot of other hospitals too.
He said the nurses should have a chance to vote, and that the process should be free of interference.
Much people may want to discourage you and tell you that you're on the wrong path. You've got to say to yourselves, this is bigger than me. I have got to do this to help families and my co-workers and I want to make a difference.
A sentiment echoed by the nurses themselves, who believe their efforts and the health of their patients are intertwined.
Ultimately, we are asking the community to join with us so that we can hold Hopkins accountable to the vision that Johns Hopkins laid out for care, to give charity care, to give high quality care to everyone in the community.
For full disclosure, National Nurses United has donated to the Real News Network in the past, most recently 2016.
I'm glad to see the nurses at Johns Hopkins taking this step, because for a long time, you know, and I've mentioned this before, when I worked at 1199 SCIU, Johns Hopkins was one of my shops. I was a political organizer, so I had, you know, several hospitals where, you know, I'd go to. And Hopkins was always interesting to me because it was, for a long time, one of the only shops where I really saw a bad relationship between the nurses and the union members. There was this perception that, you know, union members were lazy. You know, the talk from nurses was like talking down to anybody who was, you know, of, you know, any of the service employees, you know what I mean, floor techs, whatever. To see them stepping up and saying, oh, wait a minute, you know, the conditions we're working under, you know, is not serving this community in the best way, and wanting to unionize is like, I think it's growth. It shows growth, but then also like I want to know like who's over there. You know what I mean? Like who? Because you know it only takes like a couple people to just start being like, hey, you know, maybe we might have been looking at this differently. You know what I mean? Maybe we've been looking at this the wrong way.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I think to see so many different movements at Hopkins come to a head at the same time. Like to see the nurses attempt to unionize and the grad students attempt to unionize, the outcry over, it was just yesterday, it was released that Hopkins said that they just missed 16 or 18 accusations of sexual assault happening at Hopkins because of some website error.
Oh,
they just missed. So, and then
you
the
got
outcry
the
over
police force thing,
the private police force, the ICE contracts, like to see all of these sort of come to a head and these organizers working together to uplift each other's movements, I think has been really interesting.
The stock response that they emailed Taya was like,
like really?
Yeah.
It's like, we do lots of stuff. We do good things. It's like,
ask the people in East Baltimore, but I digress.
Yeah, really.
You know,
yeah, speaking of patterns of wealth distribution in this city.
What's funny, well, not funny, haha, but what's interesting about what you described, Dharna, in terms of the whole ethos, and you, Easy, about what they used to say before or their kind of sentiment towards union employees versus now, is there's been study after study showing Hopkins doctors are overworked.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and that their error rate is really high, and that there really is, and that their pay is not that great, right? And so what they're supposed to get out of being at Hopkins is the prestige of saying I worked at Hopkins, and they get run into the ground working these long shifts, and patients suffer for it. And so the nurses are like, you know, this whole idea that, you know, suffer through it and that makes you better, right? Or suffer through it and that makes you a more valuable or worthy employee really doesn't work for not only us, but our patients.
So
you know?
Maybe a messed up comparison, but kind of similar to what we were saying about BPD and police officers being, you know, on the job when they haven't slept and have been in like traumatizing situations. Does not make for, you know, a safer city, does not make for safer patients.
My cousin is a doctor, and he worked in the Hopkins ER for a little while. And when I asked him about it, he was like, cuz it's one thing to be working the ER in East Baltimore and, you know, just the cases that come in, gunshot victims, stabs, all kind of stuff coming in there. He said, but then the conditions in which, you know, some of us have to work under, he's like, it's too much. He said, I don't know how anybody can do that job for a long period of time. It's
and how
insane.
can you be the #2 hospital in the world with ER waits as long as they described in the story?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I can't stand sitting in the ER. Like, and Hopkins does have like a historically long ER wait. which because I remember I went to Sinai. Last time I was in the ER, I went to Sinai, and I was surprised at how
they move you through.
How fast they moved me through.
Triage, and then here's what you need to do. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Before I knew it, I was in the back with a robe, you know, with my butt out.
Oh boy.
So those are the stories for this week for Baltimore. Oh, we do?
Yes, we do.
Oh, my bad.
You know what? We have 2 more, and so we're going to make sure you guys are able to see it. One of them, it's not a story you can view, but it's a series of tweets that I did from this past Monday at the school board. They had a hearing, or not a hearing, they had a town hall discussing the instances we've been seeing of students assaulting school-based staff, and it was a really good town hall. So we'll maybe add a link for you guys to check that out.
Shout out to students for participating and really.
Yeah, you had John from Algebra Project, but he was really speaking on a collective voice of students from Community Law in Action. Again, Baltimore Algebra Project, Youth as Resources. And they pretty much were saying, you know, don't just talk about us like we're not here. You need to, on the front end, have us involved. Yep. You have teachers like Tiffany McKeever, which comes up in this other story, talking about people being engaged beyond the soundbite and the viral video, right? Just like you can't tell us you want to help out when you see kids in hats and gloves, or you know schools are closed because there's no air in the summer. We need that support year round, and that will cause all the schools to improve. And then Corey Gaber, one of my favorite teachers, he teaches at Southwest Baltimore, asked Dr. Santelises, he articulated that we all have a role to play in what's going wrong in schools, but said, you know, hey, what do you think Baltimore City Schools needs to take accountability for? And she acknowledged, listen, we've made decisions over time that concentrated students with the most need in particular schools, and then act like we didn't do that. Right. And so, you know, the school system has a role that is one of the roles the school system played in creating these environments that are so difficult for teachers to work in, that where there's not enough trauma-informed practice happening, where there are too many expectations being placed on educators to solve the issues of students that really require the whole community to be healthy. Right. So I thought that was decent. And also, Commissioner Ham, I had a little soundbite from him about, you know, you can't expect. I don't remember what he said, but he said something along the lines of, if you have a bunch of rules and regulations without love, you should expect rebellion. Yeah. So we'll post that, check that out. But this other piece is about a young man who was murdered last weekend, December 1st, Devontae Friedman. And he was an advocate for Community Law in Action, was just in front of City Council months ago calling for a youth fund to employ young people year-round and not just during summer work programming. And then he was killed last weekend. He didn't have a chance to reap the benefits of this proposal he and his peers were putting forward. So let's check this out.
Tonight's Baltimore City Council hearing, where Councilman Zeke Cohen is presenting a resolution for the Be More Invested Fund, supporting young people in Baltimore having access to jobs year-round through the Mayor's Office of Employment Development YouthWorks program.
Just months ago, Devontae Friedman, a youth advocate with Community Law in Action, was lobbying Baltimore City Council to get support for safer Baltimore streets. His life was taken on December 1st, during a shootout in the Barclay neighborhood.
The hashtag Be More Invested campaign is pushing to get year-long YouthWorks jobs. Therefore, we want to give the youth an opportunity to do better for themselves and also find a career more aligned to their trade.
You lost a friend, Devontae Friedman. How does his loss propel you to wanting to make sure this resolution not only can be introduced but enacted?
It motivates me to also get more youth jobs, to do things like that gets them off the streets and not in them situations. And also when we give them a chance to do something, those situations wouldn't happen as often as they do.
Tonight, Baltimore City Councilman Zeke Cohen, supported by 11 other council members, presented a resolution during the City Council meeting to support the Be More Invested campaign, a youth-led effort to expand YouthWorks to reduce violence in Baltimore.
The data is clear. When young people have a job, when they are learning and growing, and have a source of income, they stay out of harm's way.
Many who knew Devontae acknowledged he was working towards improving himself.
And what is so sort of devastating about tonight and this moment that we're in is that one of the young people who came and talked to me about this a year ago was actually murdered this weekend. He was an incredible young man, had just a beautiful sense of humor, very intelligent, was headed to college next year, and he was killed in a triple shooting this weekend.
One of his former teachers, Ebony McKeever, shared this. The thing about Devontae is that he always wanted to do the right thing, and he always wanted to be better. One of the things that I will always remember about Devontae was his desire to be productive. I asked Ms. McKeever what the Be More Invested Fund could mean for young people like her former student. Here's what she offered. It is imperative for the safety of our children in the city that we secure additional funding for year-round employment for the youth. If YouthWorks were full year, we provide additional healthy and sustainable options for our children. There is no negative side to this. And in the wake of his death, I know funding for year-round employment has the opportunity to lower violent crimes.
I think in a crisis, we need to expand both our political imagination and our moral courage. If we continue to do things the way we've always done them, we're going to continue to get the same outcomes. And so this is a call out and a call in to all of our partners in the business community, in the nonprofit sector, in government. We all need to be focused on this issue. We need to make sure this is a priority. And I would simply say that, this is a multi-billion-dollar government. The idea that we can't find what these people are asking for, which is a $2 million pilot program so that 300 young people could work year-round, to me, that is insulting. And so we are going to be pushing extremely hard. We have to rally together. We have to engage our partners across sectors, but now is the time to do it. There should not be one more Devontae, not one more Diamante or Sebastian. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. We need to act now.
What do you want to say to people who are of voting age about what they need to do to make sure this resolution becomes policy?
Honestly, keep voting, because we can't vote yet because we're underage, but you guys speak for us, so we need your help to be more invested, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, the craziest part, of course, naturally, we all know, like, his advocacy beforehand. I mean, I know, for me growing up, working after school kept me out of a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. And I still found my share of trouble. Mm-hmm. But, I think about certain things that happen, and I would come home, I'd get on the block, and it's like, it already happened. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
You missed it because you were occupied.
I missed it because I was at work, you know what I mean?
Or it missed you.
Yeah, or it missed me, thank God. So I'm for it. I hope they actually do. I hope they are able to do this. I hope they can tie it into the discussion around squeegee boys, which I think the mayor gets a lot of flack for, but I definitely give her a lot of kudos for at least attempting and opening up that conversation and trying to get them work, you know what I'm saying? And
I also give her credit for not dropping the ball on it.
Yeah.
Like, she hired somebody to work with them, Andre Bunley.
Yep.
They are continuing to strategize how to move these young men into full-time employment and being able to use their skills. So I definitely give her credit on that one.
And the city council, I mean, this is the first time in my years that I've seen so much talk around, the youth and funding for the youth. And you know what I mean? So while nothing has really, not a lot, I won't say nothing, but not a lot has been done yet. The fact that we're pushing towards that and having this conversation, and unfortunately, the loss of this young man's life is definitely going to put some urgency, I think, around that, because there's both sides of it. Like you said, I missed it missed me, you know what I mean, on both ends. Whoever shot him, they might not have been doing that if they knew they could get a job somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, well, rest in peace to Devontae Freeman.
Really,
let's hope his, not let's hope, I'm sure his death won't be in vain, and that if we get this at least pilot off the ground with the first 300 kids, that one of those kids is able to lead the city into a place as a result of staying off the streets and having issues miss them, that they're able to lead the city into a place that works for most kids as opposed to the opposite.
Yeah, for sure. But we will stay on it and keep you all informed. Thank y'all for tuning in to the Baltimore Bureau podcast. We cannot do this without you. The Real News Network is a nonprofit news organization, so we don't take money from any corporate entities or do any advertising. We are supported solely by you, the listener, the viewer. Thank you for your contributions this year. If you haven't already, please donate to the Real News Network. You can go to our website, therealnews.com. There is a campaign going on now for donations in which your donation will be matched. And new monthly donations will be matched times 12.
Yeah.
Am I reading that right?
For 12 months, so for the whole year.
Oh, for 12 months. Oh, wow. Yeah, so do that, and it'll be a good thing.
It's true.
Word up.
Shout out to everybody who makes this happen behind the scenes.
Yay.
Dwayne Gladden, Stephen Frank, Dave Hepton. Who else is back? Who else we got rolling back there?
Everybody.
Shout out to all of the shooters and editors and producers who made the stories this week happen.
Yep. And this year, I've really enjoyed working with my team here at the Real News Network this year. So shout out to everybody getting it in.
As we come to the close
As we
of
come to
2018.
the close.
Yep.
Big things happening come January, so keep watching.
As always, we close with some Baltimore music. This is from my man Locust Xavier. I mentioned my 4th annual Dirty Christmas show happening December 29th. He will be performing.
Yo, can I say something about this?
Yes.
I'm from NYC, even though I've been in Baltimore for 24 years. But this song is so dope. It gives me 1990s hip-hop flavor, conscious rap. So
it's very
when I was listening to it, I was like, okay, it's my stuff. So y'all gonna enjoy it.
On this, do you know?
He is.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
Okay.
Locust, he raps and produces. He makes beats.
It's dope. Dirty Christmas, y'all. Check it out.
Locust Xavier, straps. We'll see y'all next time.
The loud non-stop thanks to Jim Crow. Hanging with the trees, you don't need a rope. Shorty keep her pants wet up. My dick just get up. I'm feeling to get up. We finna bed up. 8th grade, and just figured I man up. They hit the fan, I pick the fan up. And if you feeling this, throw your hands up. I'm finna get the bands for my grams up. I'm talking about mama's mama, grandma, regardless. You it's harmless, you it's harmless. This performance, I'm digging the comments. Put that on mamas, put it thermometers. I'm feeling so warm in this is anonymous. Yeah. She puff past, I shoot the J's and I'm out like we some pharmacists. Now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your ass. Hey, now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your ass. Hey, you don't know me well enough. I wish a nigga would, I felt the well enough. A couple babies in the heavy duff. I hit the Cuban once and I fell in love. Something serious like a heart attack. Now there's Baltimore smack on the arm and neck. When toting gats is very common that. Where any hood rat know where my diamond at. Got you looking something like insomniacs. You need a mobile at a bat with an alarm in that. Roaches having Ramadan where the ramen at. Niggas having Ramadan where they robbing at. You see the bird where they robbing at. I hope your side got kicked where they robbing at. Now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your ass. Hey, now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your hey, now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your okay, now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your ass. Now whack rap to the slave is the urban whip. That's why I've been chiefing on nerve in the whip. And swerving the whip. Keep a verb on my hip. Met my pen pal, put my signature on the lip. Bass knocking, I ain't worried about the knockers now. I cut the bullshit, I had to get back to rocking crowns. You the type to run your mouth, I plan on running a town. You caught your bitch in my range, I plan on gunning her down. I keep her coming, that's why your chick keep coming around. See, I can summon her now and calmly put some in her now. See, I'm a young king, speaking knowledge in between the thunder. She took me under, that pussy great, that 8th wonder. Now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your ass. Hey, now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your ass, say. Now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for your array. Now that's a rap for your ass. Baltimore City got straps for that ass. Yo.